Now let's take you to Istanbul in Türkiye. There are protests now going on after the arrest of President Erdogan's main rival, the mayor of Istanbul, Ekrem İmamoğlu. The Turkish government has said that they wouldn't tolerate threats to public order and block the gatherings. The mayor of Istanbul, who was detained on Wednesday along with others from his party, had been expected to be formally named as their presidential candidate. Now further protests are expected. Let's get the very latest on what's going on in Turkey after that arrest in a story from our reporter Baljan Samigulina.
What started as a legal case now threatens to escalate into a national standoff, with Istanbul at its core in the tensions. The number of protesters in support of Ekrem İmamoğlu is growing day by day, but let's delve into why it started first. The opposition CHP party held a nationwide preliminary vote on Sunday to nominate Ekrem İmamoğlu as their main presidential candidate for 2028 elections. However, a Turkish court has ordered his arrest pending trial on charges of corruption, which İmamoğlu himself denies, calling it a smear campaign. The mayor of Istanbul, also previously accused of terrorism, charges now dropped, criticized the indictment, pointing out its reliance on anonymous witnesses. So while the ruling AK Party claims İmamoğlu's arrest is part of a legal process, critics argue it's an attempt to eliminate a rising political challenger.
Üzülerek söylüyorum.
I say with regret that a handful of minds are trying to usurp the will of our nation by abusing the police. We are facing bullying, but I want you to know that I will not be undaunted. I entrust myself to my people. Let all our nation know that I will stand upright. I will continue to fight with that person and his mind, which uses this whole process like an apparatus.
It was Ekrem İmamoğlu speaking, issuing that statement just before his arrest, and now we are witnessing protests out on the streets in his support, despite a ban on public gatherings. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his party have denied claims of his involvement in İmamoğlu's arrest, insisting Turkey's judiciary is independent. He responded to the call for demonstrations, warning the authorities would not tolerate any threats against the public order.
We will certainly not allow the CHP and its cronies to disrupt public order and disturb the peace of our people through provocations. We will not tolerate operations to be conducted or surgeries to be done on Turkey, or the building of new walls of discord between 85 million people through social engineering.
Thus, a war of rhetoric and action is intensifying between the two parties, and this weekend could bring a critical shutdown, says Hakan Güneş, an associate professor of political science at Istanbul University. As he pointed out, with the weekend's arrival, we could see even more demonstrators hit the streets. While tens of thousands have already protested, mostly students, a larger portion of Istanbul's 16 million residents could join in.
The protesters believe that this is the last moment that we can save the democracy. This is the last point. This is the red line. Okay, so that's why this is the second biggest ever protest in terms of number of protesters in the whole history of Turkey.
The other thing that will happen this weekend is the CHP is still expected to officially nominate İmamoğlu as their presidential candidate, despite his charges. As part of this, the party has called for a symbolic vote on Sunday, urging citizens to show support at polling stations across the country. Additionally, we may also learn whether Mayor of Istanbul will be eventually formally charged or released. However, regardless of the court resolution, opposition are still planning to put into life an economic boycott to the government after the protests stop.
Focus of the opposition for the coming weeks is something very, well, not a brand new idea, but relatively new thing, which is the economic boycott. So nobody is expecting to save İmamoğlu from prison next week, but everybody expects that those companies will collapse. This is the next thing that we are going to see.
Thus, today's actions must be viewed in the context of possible early elections, with the 2028 election just 3 years away. This is the first time an opposition party is nominating a presidential candidate so far in advance. So two parties will have challenges in the upcoming elections. Erdogan, meantime, would need to change the constitution to run again, as it limits presidents to 2 terms. He lacks the votes to amend the constitution, but could call for early elections to bypass this rule. But in the last local elections, Erdogan Erdogan's party unexpectedly finished second nationally, though his long-defied predictions of defeat. Today's moves, as experts say, suggest he's genuinely concerned about these tensions.
I do think that Turkey has been quite adventurous, and I suspect that other leaders might be more adventurous. He's tried to be more independent vis-a-vis Europe and especially the United States. I suspect that the CHP would be trying to have more cordial relations with the United States and with Europe. Even before Erdogan, I think going back quite some time, Turkey, going back to the 90s with the leaders who were in power after the independence of the Turkic republics.
Notably, the international response to this protest has been limited. The European Union urged Turkey to uphold democratic values, with some criticism from France and Germany. This myth of global reaction, as experts say, might be linked that Turkey is a regional heavyweight, a key NATO member, and an important ally, so few are eager to confront President Erdogan. Additionally, global attention, as observers say, might be fixated on the other global events, the war in Ukraine and continuing escalations in the Middle East. Balzhan Samigulina, New Time.